Welcome to this episode of Our College Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. The Vice President for Student Success and Assistant Vice President of Academic Advising formed a team in the fall of 2019 consisting of chancellors, directors, advisors, vice chancellors of student success, and human resources to develop advising levels similar to faculty rank levels. The team reviewed advising turnover rates and compared other institutional structures for advising promotions. The advising levels create a pathway for advisors to advance in their position by providing evidence of continued professional development, outstanding performance, and service to the college and community. The goal of this project is to be both a retention and a professional development tool. I have a great panel here with me today to share more about this exciting initiative. So let's meet them. First up is Susan Hawkins Wilding. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Kara. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Fantastic.
Good. This is actually, I have to say this for the podcast, this is the first podcast I've recorded in a long time where you and I are in the same building with each other. Now, we're not in the same room yet because of COVID protocols, but we're at least in the same building. So that's very exciting. Would you remind folks what you do for Ivy Tech, please?
Sure. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Academic Advising. I work with the great advisors and directors around the state and also assist our transfer advocates as well.
Excellent. Welcome to the show. And next up is Corey Klossman. Hi, Corey.
Good morning, Kara.
Welcome back to the show. Would you remind folks what you do for Ivy Tech?
Sure. I'm the Vice President for Student Success in Systems Office.
Excellent. Very good. And next is Jody Beatty. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Kara. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Student Success at the Sellersburg campus.
Wonderful. It's great to have you. And last but not least is Angie Schaefer. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Kara. I'm the Director of Academic Advising, and I work with the Columbus campus as well as the Franklin and Shelbyville campuses.
Wonderful. It's great to have you all here today. So I'm going to dive in. I've got a ton of questions to ask about this, and I know our listeners will as well. So how did this all start?
I'll kick us off with that. I enjoy telling this story. When I met our now been here a couple of years, President Sue Ellspermann, it's really the first thing that she came in, one of the first things she came and spoke to me about. She did a lot of the tours around the state to hear kind of the pulse of what was going on at the college. And it was something that was really on her mind about advisors, understanding and respecting the great work that they do, as well as concerns about how can we keep them, train them, really help them have a good work environment. And it's one of the first questions she asked about how might we make sure we have good advancement levels, professional development for those advisors. And that kicked off a conversation about some of what we've had been doing and some of our goals for the future. And frankly, I don't think that we had this exact thing in mind, right? We had a lot of other things in mind, and through just time and different conversations kind of came to where we are today with this specific project.
I think one of the helpful things along the way is we know that we put a lot on our advisors' plates and they have a lot to do. We know that burnout is an issue and that they just have a lot of responsibility. And so having some data along the way was really helpful to us. We kind of anecdotally knew that we had advisors turning over and that we struggled to keep them in some areas. But along the way, thanks to help from HR, we found out that we have over 10% turnover in advisors almost every year. And so it reinforced the need that we need to do more to recognize and support all the great work that they're doing and help give them a career pathway that they didn't have before this was created too.
Can you discuss a little bit about the process that you used for this project? You said sort of what you envisioned at the beginning is not what you ended up with. So how did you work through the process?
Yeah, we got, as you mentioned early, we had a good cross kind of section, a group of people, leadership, advisors, about not just roles, but actually across the state. And we came together and we talked about what we do have. Like, we standardize advising job descriptions. We have several different advising levels. And from that, we wanted to talk about, well, what is missing? What don't we have? And through that, it kind of became this idea and this concept of looking at what other colleges do nationally, but also just even what we do, and that suggestion of, well, faculty have advising levels, and then looking at what that was like here, as well as other places, and really hitting on that as a gap in what we had not built yet.
To add to what Susan said, I think the other thing that helped is there was a camp, like Lafayette, for example, had levels for their staff not just advisors, but across staff that they could kind of move up. They call it master staff, I think, although I might be getting that name wrong as well. So that helped provide an additional framework. And so the group really worked through what are kind of the different areas of growth and development and performance that we think are important for advisors. And then as those really started to take shape, we could talk about what are the different levels we see and how do we want to see advisors continue to grow and develop kind of over time, so that we could show continuous growth at each of the different levels, but keeping the same common themes consistent and just additional growth as advisors are here longer and have the opportunity to do more with us.
Well, we certainly want to see people advance in their careers. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity to see that. All right. So what are we going to see when this rolls out? What are the details of the project?
We came up with different levels and a rollout timeline. There's anybody can hire in at an academic advisor, just what's called I would say the base level academic advisor. The next level up is an academic advising specialist. You actually can hire in at that. And then there is a senior academic advisor and then an expert academic advisor, that being the highest level. The differences in these levels are both years of time and service to the college, as well as a portfolio that you develop and things that you're doing. As we mentioned, it's for professional development as well. So things that you've done to develop yourself within the field of academic advising. And so we have a timeline that we're actually starting here next month in September, with me kicking off a webinar kind of describing it. I know the directors have shared this information with their teams, but coming out of August, it'll be good to have a good refresh to talk about this with the teams and give some more details. And that's what we're going to do in September, and make sure that, kind of answer any questions. And then we're going to work from there to have the advisors providing their materials to their campus-based leadership in November and December. And then going into the next year, this is actually for the beginning, starting in the next fiscal year. Starting in July when anybody would maybe have academic, those different levels, so that there's time for the campus-based people to review the applications in February, get that information to the fiscal folks in like March and April. So there's time for that to be on that new kind of their new title on July 1st. So we've got plenty of time. We wanted to give ourselves plenty of time to make sure there's good information, but also because there is a portfolio and some work that people probably are going to want to complete in those next couple of months on that.
So as we think about, we're going to be rolling out these levels, how did the levels actually get determined?
We got together as a committee, like Susan and Corey mentioned, and we really talked through what it is we wanted to see, what it is we wanted to accomplish, and really then talked about the frameworks that already exist at the college. And that was super helpful. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Faculty already have a process like this that is statewide. Everyone is familiar with it. It really helped us guide what we wanted to see. And so then we talked through what is a reasonable expectation of an advisor, what kind of professional growth would we like to see, and honestly, what kind of professional growth is already happening with our advising teams. We've got wonderful, talented, dedicated professionals who are doing these things and kind of looking at the timeline that those things happen, and that helped build those levels.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember back, Jody, I'm like with you. I'm like, man, that seems like a long time ago, even though it really wasn't in the grand scheme of things. But I remember there's a lot of discussion about how many levels should there be. And, I think up front, we were like, some people were thinking maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. And kind of as those discussions took place, we really kind of solidified around the 4. But we kind of started with the front end of what feels right. And we are kind of in different places as a group. But after the conversations and what we expect for each, it really kind of solidified. I think as a group, we all felt really comfortable with those 4 because it just kind of gelled together in a way better than I expected. And I think probably better than a lot of people did.
Also, we wanted to, we were really excited to have HR join us in this process. And we wanted to make it so that it was something that maybe others could steal from and have a concept that could be replicated to different areas within the college. So other staffing areas could take this and adapt it for their needs. So we were trying to make it not so complex with so many levels, but also something that could be something that other areas could look at and maybe replicate, but within their own frameworks. And so that was important in our minds as we talked.
And Susan, I'm glad you brought that up because actually President Ellspermann, hi Sue, because I know she listens to every episode, just asked me where this was yesterday. And I said, I'm not sure, but we're recording a podcast on it tomorrow. So listen, and you'll know that. But she also mentioned that we have been talking about what areas are next to look at this for. And so we will be also looking at other levels in the college or other employee areas in the college to do this with. In what ways do you think this structure, you've talked a little bit about looking at other institutions. How does this compare to what other institutions do in terms of their advising structures?
To be honest, not tons of institutions do this kind of work. I think you're starting to see more and more institutions looking at this in different ways. There are some institutions that actually have advisors that are faculty. And by that, I mean, they are still full-time staff, but they come in as a faculty level. And so they then already fit into their faculty level models and things. So that's interesting differences nationwide. There are some to look to and on this, and we really took from that, and that they include a portfolio. They really focus heavily on service to both the college and the community, as well as ongoing professional development and student engagement. And so some of them included things that included more different differentiation of work or additional leadership. We felt that we already had that in our other staffing, in our other advising job descriptions. So we didn't include that in ours because hopefully people know that we have standardized job descriptions for an academic advising lead, an assistant director, a director, and a director of advising, as well as an academic advisor. So we separated the actual job description from the levels of work for professional development and service. And I think that's an important question that we've been getting, and I think it's important to highlight.
One of the things we haven't mentioned yet, but I think is also important here. So for people who are familiar with kind of the different classifications for employees, we have the E1, E2, E3, and E4 for exempt employees. As an advisor moves up those levels, their exempt classification doesn't change. So they still have that same job description. It's just they've met these additional criteria as well, which I think is just kind of neat to have.
Mm-hmm. So Angie and Jody, how do you think this is going to help on your campuses? Or what do you think it's going to change?
When I first came to Ivy Tech about 2 years ago, one of the first things that I did was sit down and interview students and find out, their perception of the advising department. And although I heard a lot of great things, the one common thread was that there was so much turnover in advising, and the students were tired of having to change and have a new advisor so often and retell their story and go through that and partner up with someone new for their educational journey. And so, retention obviously is something that I really wanted to work towards coming in for the advisors in the advising department. So I was so excited to see this, because one thing that I heard from the advising team is that, I don't know that I want to ever be a director. I just don't know that I'm management material. But I do want a pathway forward. I do want a career pathway. And so this provides that for an advisor that maybe doesn't want to be a director, even though this is a great opportunity for those that do to move up through the levels. But for an advisor who wants to just be a great advisor and keep moving up professionally and performance-wise, this is a great way for them to move through the levels. And so I'm really excited to see what this will do for the retention of our advising team across the state.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Angie. And I just think it's important for us to recognize the work that advisors are doing, the level of professionalism that they engage in when they're doing their work, because a lot of these things are already happening. Advisors are presenting at conferences, which is one of the requirements in a level. Advisors are contributing to the fields. They have degrees in in this particular area, so that they really are perfecting their craft as they go through their work at Ivy Tech. And it's nice to be able to recognize that and to really show that we value what they're doing and that we have levels of expectation as they progress through the field. So I'm just excited about what it does for advising at Ivy Tech. And I'm hopeful that others can follow this model, as Susan said, because there are a lot of folks in a lot of different areas really doing great work. And this is a way to recognize that.
One of the things, Kara, that I think is so important, and I've heard this early on in my career, and I really try to stop people from saying this, is when someone tells me, I'm just an advisor. And I don't know that I hear that in other areas necessarily. You don't hear someone say, I'm just a faculty. Maybe you've heard that. I haven't heard that as much. And I'm like, but I just want to be an advisor. Like they have to justify that they want to stay engaged on a direct student level, like with students directly every day. And I think we need to change that mindset. It's not, there's value in that. We don't necessarily hear people say, I'm just a teacher, just because they don't want to become a principal and things like that. And so it's really important to value people for their own career goals and honor them in that work, because what a great level of experience advisors that I know of in my career that have been advisors for 20, 30 years, what great impact they've had on students. And so I think this is a way also to just kind of reiterate what Angie and Jody said in that.
Susan, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's such an important point. And I do hear it from others too, that I love the role I do. I want to be as great in this role as I can be. And I don't want to take on management, or I don't want to take on this other. I just want to be the very best at whatever that role is. And for me, as someone who, is always looking at, well, what else could I do? What's next? What's next? What's next? Which is just my personality. I had to really learn to honor people in the role that they fill. And if they want to stay in that role and they love it, don't encourage them to try to apply for other things. Encourage them to take on new challenges in that same role and to improve in that way. So I do think it's an important thing for everyone to realize that we're never just X. And also, as leaders and supervisors, we need to encourage people in both ways, that it's great. If you love this role, we love you in it. Let's keep getting better at it together. But if you want other opportunities, let's try to strive for that too. I'm so glad you brought that up. So thank you for bringing that in to today's episode. This is really mostly an employee-focused goal. So if we think about this in terms of our strategic plan, this is really about goal 5 and trying to make Ivy Tech a great place to work by showing our employees new ways to value them, new ways to appreciate them. But we always go back to our core values being student-centered. And so how do you see this helping student success?
I'm really going to jump in on this because I think that professional development piece is so big. I'm really so excited. It's really enlivened my own excitement about being at Ivy Tech and working with the advisors and listening to their recorded advising appointments that they have to do. A piece of this that you have to complete the certified advisor training program that we're really proud of, that we're developing. We're almost complete with module 4, and we will have, I'm going to say it very proactively, positively, we will have cohorts that complete this by the end of fall. And advisors have to complete their advising philosophy statement. They have to do a recorded advising appointment that they get feedback on at the end of each module. We're hearing specifically from the advisors about how it has helped their work, how it has helped them engage with students, how it has helped them give them different tools, recenter their practice, ask questions in different ways. So it's not just informational, and it's not just information that we've been sharing in the certified advisor training program, it's relational. So Nakata tells us we want to have always in a good training program 3 components. Obviously, we tend to focus on informational components in advising, like the information you need to share with students. But we've really been hitting hard this last year on the relational component about how we approach students, how we phrase things. And those things build relationships with students. And we know that relationship building is a cornerstone to retention. And that is what I'm super excited about. And hoping advisors see the other part of the portfolio is engaging with their caseload. That's our other, maybe it's our first goal, but it's one of our two main goals this past year and going into fall how can we do proactive outreach to students? And that's a part of that portfolio. Like, how are you engaging with your students with academic plans or your caseload? So those two things really are very direct measures that will impact students. Saw some head nods. You all can't see it in the podcast. So I encourage my campus people that, anything that they're seeing on the campuses, even in relation to that, or what they hope.
I would echo what you're saying, that the professional development piece has a huge impact on the student experience. And at the Sellersburg campus, like all campuses, we have to have a strategic enrollment plan. And one of the bubbles that we've identified as our focus area is called professional development and the student experience, because we know how we act and behave and operate as professionals directly impacts how the students experience Ivy Tech. And so I think this is a big piece of that. What we do as advisors will impact the ability of the student to be successful. Hitting both of those pieces, some of that informational piece and the relational piece are both big factors in student retention.
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's great. We have meetings with the advising team, and it's just wonderful to hear them talk about, hey, this was a great example of a meeting that I had with a student, and here's where I was able to bring in proactive advising or things like this, that they're learning through these modules. So I certainly am excited to even see more growth in professional development through the advising levels. That's going to be great. And then again, just to reiterate what others have said, I think obviously the student and the advisor relationship is just a huge piece of their part of their educational journey. And being able to have that same advisor to go to is going to be something I think will really help with retention in the long run for our students. So I'm super excited about that.
Such a great point, Angie. To make sure our advisors know they're appreciated and they're loved and they're supported so that they'll stay, so that our students can have better relationship with them is a huge key. That's very good. And you all have reminded me, I think I've only done module 1 of the advising certification. So I got to get back in there. I'm behind. I don't know if I'm going to make it by the end of the year, Susan, but I'll try. Okay. Every episode ends with a call to action. And as Susan and Corey and Jody and Angie have already shared with you, this is going to be rolling out in September with more information. So be sure to keep an eye out. And this episode will probably kick that off because we're going to release this, I think, on September 2nd. So keep your eyes out for more information coming soon. I want to thank you again for joining this episode of Our College, Your Voices. I especially want to thank the members of today's panel. Dr. Corey Klossman, who is the Vice President for Student Success, Systems Office. Susan Hawkins-Wilding, Assistant Vice President of Academic Advising, Systems Office. Jody Beatty, Vice Chancellor for Student Success at our Sellersburg campus. And Angie Schaefer, Director of Academic Advising at our Columbus campus. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at K&M Tweets. Our producer is Sarah Ferguson. You can always reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. If you're an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, don't forget you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. I send out instructions on that every Thursday. Our website, where you're going to find links to our show notes, is ivytech.edu/podcast. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell and the Ivy Tech Community College Creative Services team, and our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. The music and press production services provided by the amazing Jen Eanes of the Brazzy Broadcasting Company, and we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.